Thank you, everyone. My name is Chris Nam. I'm the Council of Future Music Coalition. I've been here for a little over 6 months. It's been an unbelievable experience and working with some of the smartest people in the industry. So our next panel is band data for artists and labels. So basically, music has always been a game of numbers. Number of beats in a measure, number of miles to the next gig, number of records sold. Those numbers are still with us, but now we've got new ones. Number of followers on Facebook, number of followers on Twitter, number of emails harvested, number of people that are going to attend a house party in Wasilla. To make sure these numbers add up to success, artists and labels are becoming more skilled at data collection and analysis. Thankfully, technology can do a lot of the hardcore crunching, but you still need to know what you're looking at and why. Our panel of experts is here, and they'll fill you in on those details. Thank you. This is Greg.
Hi, everyone. My name is Greg Beshers. I work for IODA, which is not the club in Northern Virginia. It's the Independent Online Distribution Alliance, and we are a digital distributor. But like many people who get into the music business, I am a musician too, and have been for many years, although I make my money now working in digital distribution. So I want to start off before I introduce everyone by saying I'm really freaking old. When I started playing music, there wasn't even MySpace, and that came about in the last 6, 7 years. And that's kind of that was a new big technological advance that musicians could go and meet and have a social network. And even now, people would argue that MySpace may not be the most effective place to go and those kinds of things. But the panel we have today is, there's 3 people. There's Lee Martin from SoundCloud. There's Alex White from Next Big Sound. And Allison Shaw, who's filling in for Ariel Hyatt, who has the flu, to talk. She's from Dot Music and also band management, label consultancy, and she's going to speak to the tools. But I want to start with Lee with SoundCloud, and he can tell you about what SoundCloud is and kind of go from there.
Sure. Should I introduce myself?
Yeah. Of course.
All right. What's up?
Yeah.
Lee Martin. I've worked in the music business for about 8 years now. For 6 years, I was sort of the go-to nerd for some really prominent rock bands like Foo Fighters and Beastie Boys and Beck. And I just recently took a job as U.S. employee #1 at SoundCloud. What I'll be doing for SoundCloud is existing in the U.S. It's a German-based company, so it's cool to have someone here in the States, wearing T-shirts and handing out stickers. B, I'm working with some bigger acts like John Legend and stuff like that to build really custom solutions using SoundCloud. I should explain what SoundCloud is. I'll do that in a second. And 3, we're building sort of open, scalable applications to basic artist solutions and giving them away for free for any artist to use. So a lot of that knowledge that I learned working in management for rock bands, we're now building and applying that over for free for any artist to use. So SoundCloud, let me explain it real quickly. SoundCloud is basically, the internet had images and then they had video, but there was never really a good platform for audio. So SoundCloud is trying to build what's basically the Flickr for audio. So audio professionals, people who make sound, would go up there and use that service to share their audio publicly and privately. So that's SoundCloud. So maybe if you want me to dive into anything particular.
Why don't you talk about not only how...
So I don't want to pitch the products right now.
No, sure. Maybe talk about how the musicians kind of find one another and how they choose to work together on the site, and also what kind of stats are generated from that usage,
sure,
and how they're scalable on a practical level for the musicians to be able to apply them to their career.
Sure. Before I go into SoundCloud, I'll talk about management. I'll talk about my initial experience. I worked at a management company called Silver Artist Management, and just like Foo Fighters and Beastie Boys and Crooked Vultures, and it's a very old school rock and roll management company. The guy who owns the company used to manage me at one point. So, it's the real deal. But we always took a practical approach to these sorts of things, and I'm nerdy, and I'm always down for using the coolest and newest technology. But statistics is something it's hard for me to wrap my head around the effectiveness of it, so I use it sort of sparingly. So I'll go through just a few of the tools that we use, and maybe some of these will stay. We always add Google Analytics to all of our websites, which is great for tracking, just generic website traffic, where your traffic's coming from, what sort of traffic it is, who those people are. That's cool. We also use Bitly to track links like within Twitter, which is just Bitly is a link sharding service. You make a big link, you use the sharding, you can spread it out on Twitter. The cool thing is you get really good click data from that, and it helps you figure out the effectiveness of Twitter. We also use, just go into this real quickly, it's an e-commerce platform called Shopify, which is a really big point for like D2C, like digital marketing with companies like Topspin and things like that. If you're trying to sell e-commerce on the internet, if I had to pick a product, I would always go with Shopify because they have a really great data infrastructure also. And one thing that's unique about it is the abandoned order statistic. So you can find out which people have gone to your website and put stuff in a cart but not actually have checked out. And you'll get their email address and you can market to those people, which is kind of cool. So that's just a generic story.
All right, well, let's move on to Alex from Next Big Sound. Telling everybody what Next Big Sound is, what it does.
Hey guys, I'm Alex. I run a company called Next Big Sound. We do online music analytics. So what we do is we measure the popularity of hundreds of thousands of bands online across all the main websites and sell insights around this data and a presentation back to band managers, artists, other industry professionals. And we launched our site last August, and it's a site that lets anyone come there and search and compare any artist. And we pull in all the statistics from MySpace, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, SoundCloud, Wikipedia, on and on, into a centralized dashboard. You can sign up for free weekly email reports on any band you work with or are interested in. Kind of comes with, you had 50 plays this week, that's a 25% increase from the week before, kind of like a sound scan for the internet. And what we've done now is create a centralized dashboard. You heard everything Lee was talking about, using Google Analytics and all the different tools for an artist. And what we realized was that the savviest managers did have all these numbers and stats coming in from all over the place. They had SoundScan reports, they had ticket sales information, they had the digital numbers from iTunes and Amazon, they had Google Analytics and on and on and on. And so needed one centralized place to see all of this data and be able to pick out trends between all the different data sources coming in. So, hey, did that spike in YouTube videos lead to an increase in digital sales or those kind of relationships?
So have you seen, like with all this explosion of data that everyone's trying to track, and now you've kind of centralized it in one form or another, have you seen any kind of trends as far as where you're moving the needle as far as sales or concert attendance or sales online versus sales, say, physical albums versus T-shirts or things like that?
The first kind of phase of this, we're still a very young company, but is getting all this data in one place and getting all these feeds. So we have a deal with the P2P data provider and another one with daily radio numbers coming in. So we're just starting to, and then anyone can import sales information into the platform, and we just announced a partnership with IODA where anyone who's an IODA client can port in their sales information. So we still are still gathering all the data in terms of getting it all in one place. But we are seeing things like the example we used last week in our webinar we gave was Maroon 5's label 8M Octone. Is an early user of our site, and they imported sales numbers, and we see around the release of their singles and albums a spike in digital plays across all these different social media sites preceding sales spikes. So you can see a spike in social media activity, and then the following week you see a corresponding spike in digital.
Very cool. And in full disclosure, my company does have a partnership with Next Big Sound, and I got a chance to poke around the premium services. And this is what we know where I'm going with this. So, and I really want you to talk about this. The geographic mode. We have a few bands plugged into this, and the nice thing about the IODA partnership is that we can actually plug in actual sales figures from a record that's in our system. But what the geographic aspect of Next Big Sound does actually shows you where people are across the entire world and where they're buying. But I want to.
My favorite part of demoing our product for people is this geographic screen where it's a map of all your Twitter followers and your MySpace friends on the map, and then I ask, or I know where the people are that I'm demoing this for, and they're like, I'm in New York City, and I type in New York, and it like zooms into New York, and then there's these people. I can't say the expletives that people say when I, zoom into their, block people of, profile pages of people that they recognize or whatever. But that's one application within is all this geographic stuff, and we're just at the basic geographic level. We're working on a lot more advanced applications, but thinking about the ability to message fans in a particular area or understand, hey, this person's your follower on Twitter, subscribes to your YouTube channel, has bought this, and this from you, and is sitting in this seat at your concert. Very powerful / creepy.
and that too. They are this gender. They live in this zip code. If you're going through Montana, you have 100 people, fans that
They
live
are
in
5
Bozeman.
yards northeast.
Yeah, exactly.
Your exact location is.
Exactly. I mean, it is one of those holy shit moments when you see this, and it's like, oh my god, everything you've ever done online is.
I was demoing for Island Def Jam, and Justin Bieber was the example, and it kind of there was a huge cluster of fans at the Island Def Jam building in New York. And everyone on the call, you can see, got a little bit. They're like, oh, there's an elementary school right down the street.
Yes.
It's the next Kurt Cobain. That's what he labeled himself.
So let me introduce Allison Shaw. She's from Dot Music. She's kindly filling in for Ariel Hyatt, who had the flu and couldn't make it. But I'll let you explain your history and usage of these social media.
I don't know where to go after Justin Bieber now. I don't follow that. Well, how many people here are musicians? Do we have a lot of musicians in here? Good. That's perfect. Because just how these guys are your back door, how they're telling you how they track statistics, how they're able to gather all these things, how they have a dashboard and stuff. I'm going to be on the front side with you guys and tell you about how I utilize these numbers for my band and how to utilize them to track things, track trends, and how we utilize that towards fans and knowing what our next steps are. My history is I started out writing for VH1 and MTV a while ago. I had a national music magazine. I produced music festivals. I'm the creator and the producer for the Rachel Ray Festival at South by Southwest. I also manage bands and film directors and consult for labels, and I am now the Vice President of Marketing for Dot Music, which is the new top-level domain. It's an extension. How there's .com, .net, .org. When you go and register your domain, wherever you go to get to all that, when you're going to register for your own web, you're now going to have .music as a choice. Yeah, get excited.
We'll get a presentation of that.
We will. Hey. But I'll just say yes. Right after this thing, I don't know. I'm still thinking Justin Bieber. My lovely boss down there is going to give a few-minute presentation on what Dot Music is. So you guys are going to learn a lot more about that. But that will we also at that point, and this is where he's at, will also be tracking statistics. We're going to have a music platform side of that as well, which we launched in March at South by Southwest. That'll also do all that kind of stuff, and you will probably be utilizing these guys, Next Big Sound definitely, for their dashboards and all this, and going with that. So that's where I'm able to speak. And yes, Ariel Hyatt should have been here, but one degree of separation is that Ariel Hyatt did the online publicity for my band. So there you go.
So let's get back to SoundCloud and kind of I realize that you're fairly new with the company, but what kind of
Fairly new in America.
yeah, what kind of I guess larger names collaborations have they been involved with?
Justin Bieber. One of our more popular tracks was this Justin Bieber track that was uploaded, but it was slowed down by 800%. And it was turned into this 35-minute atmospheric masterpiece, basically. It was our first viral hit on SoundCloud. But I'll explain SoundCloud a bit more. So it's an audio platform for the web. It's Analytics works much the same way YouTube works. You as an audio professional go there to upload your music. You have an account, and then you use it to either share it publicly or privately. Privately, we have a product that lets you share, with specific email addresses or specific people, keep it secure. But publicly, we have like a widget-based platform, so you can put widgets all over the web. The cool thing about our widgets is they can exist in so many different forms and in so many different sites and within applications and integrations. But all the statistics come back to the website in one universal way. You have these sort of like main tracks, the tracks themselves all exist as these entities, but the statistics are all on SoundCloud.com. So the first statistic is, of course, the when, at what point during your career that people are listening to, what songs. But we also track, what I think is the coolest statistic, and I wanted to jump in, is geographical locations. Because, like you said earlier, you noticed that with Maroon 5, when there was a huge spike in social traffic, there was also a huge spike in sales. Like, that's not really a great statistic, that's like a practical statistic, but I think geographic statistics are amazing because it's becoming tough to sell music online these days, but when it comes to being an artist, all you want to really do is like tour and play music. That's what you love to do, and play for an audience. When you have these geographical statistics, like where you're most popular, you can almost sort of base your tours around these sort of bigger sort of people, like all these fans in one place. You can base a tour around that. And I think that's the best statistic, because then you don't have to really worry about all this web stuff for a little bit. You can just go to a show, sell some concert tickets and some t-shirts and make some real money. I think that's the best statistic
Well,
for artists right now.
and it's certainly an interesting point as to where you guys see the line between how much time do you spend using these tools versus how much time do you spend producing a new record or writing a new song or practicing with a band.
I think it's part of the you need the team around you, and whether that's the form of a label or whether that's the form of your guitar player who's really into kind of looking at the numbers and seeing, obviously the most important thing in the whole foundation that everything we do is built on is great music that's written and produced and recorded at a high quality. But then kind of whether you're starting a business or a band, it's kind of, you want to find what works and start and kind of capitalize on that. So one example would be our head of sales is in Nashville, and he manages his daughter, Daphne Willis, who's signed to Vanguard. And he was looking at the tool, the geographic stuff, and noticed that in Austin and in Portland, Oregon were like two areas that she had much more activity than any other places. And he made some calls. He worked at Sony for 30 years prior, so we had some connections, but we were able to get her kind of residencies at two of those locations. So she was out there for a couple weeks, and that kind of growing those two markets was very effective for him, rather than kind of guessing or just staying in Nashville, which is where
Certainly, and I think comparatively from how it quote unquote used to work with radio, like we knew that you could say, well, this DJ is very influential, is playing a record. This is a more immediate kind of feedback that you're giving to these artists. But let's talk for a minute about what we had spoken about briefly about the vanity metrics versus actual metrics, like especially in lieu of the geographic map. Like you could have 300,000 MySpace friends and say 10,000 of those live in Portland, Oregon, but how do you actually engage those people to come out to your shows or buy albums or t-shirts or downloads?
Well, I guess I might be the expert on that. MySpace their trends have changed a lot lately. It used to be where it was more of the plays that where you'd be, if you saw how many plays you were getting or whatever, you were like breaking it in or whatever. If you notice your profile views and plays are completely different. It's where you could have 1,000 profile views in a day or whatever, but if you've only gotten 20 hits on your player, that means nobody's going to your player to listen to it. One of the things that obviously we have Google Analytics too, and we have a bunch of different things that track us with our that can track when we do MySpace. MySpace right now is still one of the easiest places where if we know we're playing a show, we can get on and like start hitting up people in that general area. Like that's still the smartest thing to do, no matter what, is to start, you know, it allows you to find them from, it used to allow you, I don't know how easy it is anymore, but it used to allow you to go and track right within the zip code of where your club was playing and go within like a 10-mile radius, and you could start hitting up all the people that were there and say, hey, we're playing a show tonight, you know, come down, you know, we'll put you on, you know, we have some guest list or whatever, we put like 20, we buy 20 people tickets if they bring 20 or 30 people or whatever, or stuff like that, but I think lately, I think it's easier probably to find friends on Facebook than it is. MySpace has changed the way they do things. You can't even look up how it used to be on MySpace. You could look up by location bands, by zip code. If you want to swap shows or you want another band, like you run in Portland, which is 2 hours from where I live, and we want to find a band in Portland to swap with. We're going to play in Seattle. We'd love to come and bring them down to Seattle and bring them to Portland. I don't think you can do it on MySpace by location anymore. I don't know why they changed that, but now it's easier to do it on Facebook. We go through, what I do is go through and look for friends on our band site that are in that area, and we go and talk to them and then go through, and they go through it to all their friends. So it's worked like amazing. Like our last show that we had, you know, we didn't know anybody in the town that we were in, but we went through friends that on all of our sites. You know, there's 5 people in the band, I'm their manager, and we went through all of our sites to see who lived in that town, what friends we had that lived in that town. We talked to them, had them put out blasts, like 100 people showed up to the show, you know, which was awesome for us. We thought we were gonna get like 10. So I mean, there's different sites. I think, honestly, MySpace isn't as great as it used to be. Obviously, Facebook is, you know, better for keeping, you know, profile views and listening to music. Obviously, Facebook can't do that. MySpace is still there for that.
Well, I think Facebook is to find new fans, whereas, like you said, MySpace was there initially and there for plays.
We were talking last week about wanting to do a study of MySpace friends and seeing what percentage for which bands were other bands that were friends of the MySpace bands. It seems like a lot of times it's just bands friending other bands.
Posted on the wall.
Well, they're all doing that. What they do is most of the time when other bands are friending bands, they're probably friending bands that are kind of close to similar genres that they're in, so that they could start talking to them. And I know that's what I would do with my bands, is I would have them go and just add bands in different states that were friends with them, so we could start conversations, start swapping shows, start putting together tours, which we have. We've done it just through MySpace. You know, we put tours together, we've swapped out shows in other places, we play a college show in a town nearby, we'd contact somebody, a band or somebody similar, go through and see who had shows, see if they could jump us on a show. So MySpace is still a great resource for that. I'm not the biggest advocate of MySpace anymore, but I think like I said, you've got so many different ones out there. MySpace is the only one kind of its kind that has so many friends like that, and it's Facebook. But Facebook, again, doesn't have a generalized area. You can't really get on Facebook, and it's not the first place you think of to go and listen to their music, you know, other than MySpace or YouTube or something.
It's tough also because all the networks are changing the effectiveness of the MySpace platform that used to be.
It used to be phenomenal. I mean, you could track.
It was It was like the band's MySpace account. So
Yeah.
The website and the MySpace account, it was like a destination.
It was.
There's no destinations on the web.
Well,
Everything's decentralized.
Ever since they sold it, when it was theirs and they sold it, it became this huge commodity for just commercialism. So basically on the front page now, instead of it where it used to be, you could look up thousands and thousands of bands at a time, and in any location. You remember how you used to be able to punch in locations and countries and stuff? You can't even do that anymore. And now they just have like the top 100 bands in each genre, and that's it. That's all you can look for. There used to be where you could look thousands of pages. Charts. Sorry. Yeah, charts. And on the front now is top 10 bands, and anything that's advertised are probably paid advertisements or or major bands. They don't focus on unsigned in any bands anymore. So it's hard to.
Certainly, but I mean, I'll play devil's advocate for a second. But if you're a band and you don't have a MySpace page,
Right.
you know, like if I type the band's name into Google and look for it, and no MySpace page comes up, I'm kind of like, what the hell?
You should have a MySpace page.
Yeah, I mean,
because
at the very least, whether or not you engage in that community fully, as opposed to, say, Facebook or, and MySpace recently launched too, their platform integration with Facebook and Twitter, making those things much, much easier. But, and it's arguable whether they're doing it, too little, too late, or whatever. But they have integrated that. I guess I wanted to talk.
I just have one thing to add.
Sure.
I mean, especially in terms of like media content, like audio, you're not going to put it on MySpace if you're going to use a product like SoundCloud. The most important statistic you should be tracking is source-based information. Just talk about sources is just where the plays are happening. So then you don't have to play the guessing game. You could use the SoundCloud player, put it on your MySpace, and just look who's actually playing it in relation to how many people are playing it on Facebook. And in terms of like geo-targeting your fans, Facebook is going to be probably one of the best platforms. If not for email, because when you capture email, you should also be capturing a zip code, just so you can target to specific geo-locations. But on Facebook, all these people are tagged to specific locations, and on your Facebook page, you can actually drill down and message a specific city now, which is a nice feature if you just want to let one particular city know that you're coming to town or something.
He brings up an excellent point, actually. If you're ever talking about statistics, I think one of the most important things you can have is an email list, because the email list will give you a geographic location from anywhere in the world, and there's a lot of different sites. MySpace, I don't think, does an email list, but there are places like Reverb Nation and Nimbit and all these other places that if you guys don't know about these, that hold mass emails. You can hold it to like 100,000 emails, on this thing, and that's also a great place to look at, because it'll show you where these people are geographically as well, in most of the situations, and that way you can start hitting your target audience from there. If you're like, okay, it'll give you, I'm going to be playing a show in Athens, Georgia, type, where are all my emails in Athens, Georgia.
Yeah, you certainly want to email someone in Chicago.
No, but
then they're going to get pissed off.
Every deal has countries too. It's
But
just like,
if you can bring it up
by.
by, again, by zip code, like, okay, because when these people sign up for emails, they also sign up for zip codes where they're at. And you can type it up by zip code where your club is, and it shows everybody within a 50-mile radius. And you can type up, email them and say, hey, we're having a show. I think having an email list is very important. But if we were talking about any statistic at all, and that's certainly a very important thing to have.
So I want to ask Alex, I want to ask you, and I understand that Next Big Sound, is recently new to the marketplace, and you don't have a lot of historical data, but have you seen, via Twitter specifically, any kind of tastemaker that has driven stats for bands?
Individual Twitter user?
Yeah, like is there a super user? Like we all know, like, or maybe we don't all know, I read Perez Hilton Limited, but like Ashton Kutcher has like, what, 1.5 million followers or something, obviously he's a super user, but have you seen that kind of scale to the music?
Well, it's different in every case, and there's whole companies devoted just to finding influencers within kind of Twitter. There's a company called Cloud, there's a company called, I forget, there's so many companies targeting those, but we look at more kind of at the macro level of, 2 years ago I went on tour managing a band called Sing Aloud, and I was paid by the label to build and maintain all these different profile pages for the artist. And back then there was a wiki list of bands on Twitter, and it was like 80 bands long. And I added,
Did you build that list?
No, I just added it. But now, is that list maintained anymore? Because there's we track thousands and thousands and thousands of bands on Twitter nowadays, and that number has gone up through Bitly and that sort of thing. We're hearing over and over that it's such a great platform for engaging directly with your fans and being able, when a band releases new material, who do you think is going to be most excited about? It's the people that are bothered to opt in to receive updates on that band, what's going on. And so it's a great early way to launch new material and spread the word.
And with Next Big Sound, you guys track like all the retweets, or is it just the initial?
We just look at the follower counts day to day, and so the idea is that all of this, music-related activity has moved online, and it can all be tracked at a very detailed level. And so, if you have a band has 50 Twitter followers one day, and 500 the next day, and 5,000 the next day. Those are the kind of numbers we look at, and then we let, that triggers alerts in our system to look in and see what's happening, or
Something's going on.
something's going on. And that we found is a lot more reliable way of seeing what's interesting rather than kind of machine listening or doing all these natural language processing.
Especially on Twitter, because Twitter, there's all these massive follower accounts, it's such a vanity game on Twitter. But really, just use Bitly and look at your click-throughs, because I've managed Twitter accounts that have 2 million followers. We put a Bitly link up there to a new song, it'll get 6,000 clicks. Whereas, I've managed accounts that have 30,000 followers and they've got 20,000 clicks, It really it's definitely quality over quantity. You don't want to actively and aggressively try and get more Twitter followers. You want people to be able to opt into that on their own, because they actually want to listen to what you have to say.
I Twittered once about mortgages and just got so many spam Twitter followers to my personal account. So, that's a good example of a vanity metrics of, that's how many engaged, high quality people we have opted in.
And those million followers, that all came about because Twitter did a suggested users list, which was one of their first mistakes as a platform. They basically added all these huge people to a list, and some of the bands I worked for were one of them. And they would just basically, when you signed up for a Twitter account, if you weren't paying attention, you would accidentally follow one of them. They would pre-opt you into it, basically. So all these huge following counts started coming up. Yeah. Whereas most fans should only have about 100,000 followers, or they're true fans,
Sure, but I think most of us here would probably want to know what Dave Grohl is eating for breakfast tomorrow.
Well,
I told Dave not to tweet, and he
I was
just started
actually
tweeting.
saying one of the things, and speaking statistically wise on the band front for Twitter, how many people use Twitter, Facebook? Do you guys, because, as fans, we're really interested actually in what you guys do. I think it's interesting when you guys go on tour, and any crazy thing that happens on tour, I think it's great to tweet out and tweet out, and let them know. And also one of the things that we found was posting on other people's sites. As the band, we found we got a lot more followers doing this. Is what we started doing was getting on our fans' Twitters and our fans' Facebooks, and just going through their posts and posting something, and all their fans or their friends would start seeing our posts and getting on our stuff. And within 2 weeks of them being on tour, and they'd go and post crazy stuff on their friends' stuff, and other friends would see them and add them and add them and add them. We had another 20,000 people that started following them just from doing this. Just from posting crazy stuff on other people's pages, just not on their own either. This is the crazy thing. They post, I'd make them take pictures and post it on one of just a random fan. Just like how Kanye West followed some random guy somewhere. We just followed we followed 10 random fans and started posting other things. And between them collectively, they all had 10,000, 20,000 friends or something like that. And so many people were adding us and following us, adding us on Facebook, liking us on Facebook, following us on Twitter. It was actually a really good little strategy that worked just from Twitter and Facebook.
And you probably be bored on a 10-hour drive.
Yeah, well, we were just we started posting crazy pictures of other people's sites and not just our own.
But I think that's important because one thing about all these little social networks is you definitely have to understand the basics of it and use it what it's there for. But if you take it just one step further with some of these, it's going to be a lot more effective. We played this game on the Jimmy World Tour that was very similar. I would go to a show and I would tweet from the band's account and just say, raise your hand if you're on Twitter right now. And people would be checking their phones, and then people would start raising their hands. And then I'd go up to them and I'd take a picture of them and I'd tweet it from the band's account. I'd do something like that.
That almost sounds like a drinking game.
You know me too well. And it's similar,
and certainly I was reading recently about the positive effects of Twitter and how the band Driving Crime was on tour. They woke up one morning and their gear got stolen, their truck and their trailer, and within 4 hours they had found a couple of their guitar amps down in Atlanta, a few hours away from where they were, because people had picked it up and their followers started posting it and other people started posting it. So
Twitter can give you an immediacy unlike any other.
But I guess since you guys are all from the statistical side, mostly for the most part. Do you see any negative impact from kind of this lack of fourth wall performers these days? And by using this technology, has it diminished anything, or is it like pulled the curtain and now we can see the wizard? Is that?
I view an artist's willingness. Everyone, in the world has, either enjoys this sort of interaction and level of closeness, or doesn't get it. Whether it's friends or family, or everyone has their own, time when they first signed up for Twitter, or don't believe it, or can't believe that Foursquare exists, and people do that, and some people love it. But it's part of the kind of asset, base, and if you have an artist that does enjoy that kind of interaction and that kind of transparency, then that's a great thing and a great, art and managers like that. But we get a lot of managers, come like, can you talk to, my guitarist and make sure he posts on his Facebook every day? I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that.
Well, for a small fee, but
yeah.
that's something else. It's a joke.
If you should do it, it needs to be real, it needs to be truthful. So if it's obvious when it's just kind of set up as a dummy account and it's just used to kind of promote and it's never anything.
For me, it was always, it really depends on the artist. For me, it was no for Dave Grohl, but yes for Jimmy World. It's like Dave Grohl, it's better, he's like an old rock and roll star. He doesn't need to be on there like singing like he said when he's having for cereal. But then Kanye was like, I'm not using Twitter, and now he's there like, whatever, he's just skits. But,
so if you're a little bit left to center and i.e. crazy, then it's probably good.
Is it? How many people here like John Mayer? Anybody like John Mayer? Who owns John Mayer music? Anybody own John Mayer music? Now, we've all seen the tweets that he has posted.
And we all just took your picture, by the way.
He's kind of crazy with his tweets. Like, it's like we can't believe the things he said, the things that he said in Rolling Stone, that we didn't need to hear about his sex life with Jessica Simpson. We didn't need to hear a lot of these things, right? And then you end up going, what happened? This guy used to be really cool, and then he's kind of crazy now. How many of you would still go to his shows and buy his music, even though he's crazy? So some of you won't. Some of you guys that raised your hand won't now because of his tweets. But he's still the same musician that he was. He's still writing awesome music. Have you heard his new stuff? It's phenomenal. But
that also kind of begs the question, though.
Yeah.
Was he as cool as you thought he was? And then you found out
there was no Facebook and Twitter yet. There was no when he was 24 and he came out with his first album, there was no Facebook and Twitter.
Maybe he was always kind of a douchebag.
Because one of my band members also went to Berkeley with him. One of the band members of my band that I managed went to Berkeley with him and said that he was kind of a douchebag. In fact, I have worse stories, but we didn't know. But since he's making it his own choice to get on and say what he's saying.
Sure.
And there are a lot of bands that are out there not being as crazy. We do crazy stuff and post crazy stuff, but I'm not going to go. I don't want them to talk about what they did for sex last night or how their partner is whatever he called her, or something crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's certainly what
the guy can sell a record. No one's going to argue that.
Right.
Despite his success, I'm just saying maybe Twitter exposed the fact because he got so personal with so many people that a lot of people were turned off by that. And that's certainly...
Right.
You should never put a tool like that in someone's hand.
And then you're looking at
Here, it's up to the world. Please don't freak out.
Like you guys said, some artists should be on Twitter and are encouraged to do so, and some, it's best if you just kind of...
He's still selling out.
Sure.
All of his shows were still sold out. No matter what, you cannot take away from the fact that he's a great musician and he's a great songwriter. It's the same thing like Kanye West. Kanye West did not utilize a social network. He utilized, unfortunately, television that went out. A little more than social network.
Social network.
And decided, you know what, Taylor, screw you, Beyonce. And then what happened? How many of you ended up really not liking Kanye after that? You're like, it was wrong what he did. It was wrong.
Certainly it was wrong.
But
who hasn't had a few drinks and done something
you
stupid?
still go out and buy his albums because the guy's awesome, isn't he? So I mean, is it good? Is it bad? So you know, the social networking thing. There's so many avenues right now. There's so many things. There's so many places where we could screw up. You know, we could say something inadvertently on Facebook that we didn't mean.
Or on this panel.
We're right here.
It was just like 50 Cent said something a few days ago, and the whole world was like, what does he really mean by that?
Well,
But, you know, he may have not meant anything bad by it, but there's so much miscommunication with text. How many, I mean,
even via email.
via email, yeah, via everything.
Tones
There's
can be misconstrued.
nobody knows how to answer a phone. What do you mean talk on the phone? Just text me. I'm only available by text.
We should, we've got about a little less than 20 minutes. We should take some questions from the audience, maybe? So, Adrian?
Yeah, I have a question to change the topic a little from going to audience-based to like using Twitter for musicians for musicians' sake. I use Twitter to follow and to communicate with other people on the road for touring. I know all you guys tour with bands, it sounds like. Is there any features of Twitter or any social things that you guys see where it's like, the only resemblance I can think of is like truckers and CV radios, and you can spend time on the road, you spend so much time on the road to communicate with other musicians that you know are on tour and time, and really just enjoying the fact that you're going to be spending the next 10.5 hours in the car together.
Well, you'd never really enjoy the next fact that you're going to be spending 10.5 hours in the car together, but I think that from what you say, yeah, we've done the same thing where we're touring along other people and we're Facebooking and Twittering each other, and I am, you know, if we have that statistic thing.
Is there any, I mean, are there services?
You mean like almost like a walkie-talkie service online?
Yeah, I mean, just or like a central website, some sort of, is that something?
Well, I mean,
that
if
you
you're getting internet and access on if you have wireless in your car, or you're actually getting, because you know you're going to be dropping reception a lot too. So it'd be nice to have some kind of.
Wait.
Talking about an audio version?
Well, I
think it's like a Twitter.
the ability to communicate with each other, sort of like, oh, there's a great new app that just came
Or are you
out.
talking like
There's a
just a list of bands
Twitter
who are on tour?
I mean,
registered?
we're a band, we're in Alabama on tour for the next 10 days. You know.
Who else is out there in this market? Right. That sounds like a good idea. I don't think it exists.
Let's do it. Who wants to do it? It does.
Sounds like couch band. I have a question about using Twitter and using it most effectively. Like, I use Twitter to kind of get personal with my fans and let them see, like, the side of me, like, look, I'm a cool guy and I want to be your friend kind of, but at the same time, like, when it comes time for me to, like, tweet links on music, I want it to be as effective as possible. Now, with our followers following more and more people, is it, how many times should you tweet a link? Like, if I came up with a new song, should I tweet it 1 time, 2 times? 3 times, and over what course of period should I be tweeting this student so that I'm not like, don't sound like this self-promoting douchebag?
Yeah, it's just, I mean, marketing music in general, you have to sort of, pace yourself, not over-market yourself, you know? At least you have a few different social networks to work with, the Facebook, Twitter, some email. But, I mean, typically when we do it for our artists, we tweet a link, and maybe tweet a link again, you know, one for the States, one for everyone on the other side of the world. But we do try and change the content, change the format of the content, audio to video, or like I just did an album premiere with this guy, Alan Johannes. We put his whole album up just as a stream, and then I got him to go back in and curate all the tracks. So just write a comment on each track, and we're gonna say again, like, hey, go look, he just added comments to all the tracks, you know. I think you do have to give them something extra. But then on Twitter, you know, you have immediacy. When you tweet, you're going to miss everyone on the other side of the world because they're not going to check your tweets. They're just going to check their timeline. So you should still be giving them that information.
So I do want to let Alex answer this because he works for the company that tracks all this stuff. So tell us the secret. What is the one answer that we all
Just can't leave this room. No, it's, from what we hear, it's like in the beginning of the day and then kind of an end of the day sort of thing. Some people, it's tough because everyone uses Twitter differently. Some people just like dip in and spot check a couple things and go out, and some people read every single thing that comes through. And the biggest thing you don't want to, I mean, they are interested in your music and they're following you and they're interested in you as a person, so you shouldn't feel like you can't post that sort of stuff. There's some people I read that post, 3 times in a couple hour period, and that gets too much, and you do that over and over, you and watch your followers. You can also just watch your follower count too, of like, you know, maybe trying it once or twice and measuring the click-throughs. But that's really the point of, I think, this whole thing is that you should measure that and test it and say, all right, well, 1 week I'm going to post, you know, 3 things spread out over the week, and 1 week I'm going to post 3 in 1 day, and see what the click-through kind of difference is. You can use Bitly to track the individual links.
Find what works for you.
Definitely check Bitly out, because you'll just know, you know. I mean, we posted like the Queens of the Stone Age song. We hadn't talked to our fans in like a month. Crazy bunch of hits. The same thing the following week. It was like half that. You know, it just happens, you know. You kind of want to hold the good stuff back, and when you're really excited to share it, just trying to keep it changing, at least format-wise, you know.
And they made a great point about, somebody just brought up this thing, we're very aware of time zones. You know, we know that if we post something at noon today, people in the West Coast, it's 9 o'clock, you know, and then, you know, but then also like, oh, the lead singer of my band is half Malaysian. So we're trying to be aware of, we have like 20,000, 50,000 fans in Malaysia, you know, and so we're trying to be aware of that time zone too. So when you do, like, you can oversaturate with links. I've seen people post the same thing 8 times a day. Like on Facebook, I'll check, you know, you'll just check your timeline, the most recent or whatever, you know. And I have, you know, if you have a lot of friends, within 5 minutes, everything that anybody posted could be gone. So, you know, you can post something like in the morning when you wake up, and then maybe like again, half midday through, so that everybody maybe on all time zones checks it. And you can change the wording, hey all West Coasters, hey all East Coasters, but then you're also trying to be international, hey all time zone, whatever. You know, just change the wording, make it different or whatever, but I think it also depends. You gotta remember how many friends you have and how much are they gonna see when you post something, you know, and you have no response. Don't get freaked out right away, because you gotta remember, you know, people may not see it for a while. And there's people that have only like 200 friends on, you know, or followers that will see it because it hasn't changed that much. But people with over 1,000 or 2,000, it's gonna change very fast.
Gentlemen in the back.
I know we talk a lot about Twitter and Facebook, and as well as your, do you think as artists you can be oversaturated? And because they're like 10, 15, you know, different sites, like LinkedIn, you got Twitter, Facebook.
Oh, oversaturation of websites that you use
human.
as artists. Absolutely.
That was what
How do you?
I was tasked to build all these profile pages for the band that didn't have all of them. And very quickly, once you build all of them, that you hear over and over, you need to be everywhere, you need to be everywhere. Very quickly, you're like, well, what the heck, you know, it's way too much to maintain. And like, if I have an hour a day or, you know, 30 minutes a day before I can, you know, sound check, what should I do with that time? Should I post something to Twitter, or Tumblr, or YouTube, or Facebook,
Call
or
home.
whatever? Call home.
Whoever you like at home, call that in
And
that
so-
half an hour.
So different, each one has its own, each network has its own strengths and weaknesses. So like, BuzzNet was like really great for the band because they were in this one scene and type of music. And Pure Volume's good for a different, you know, similar sort of type, and then there's other different networks. So, you know, you can measure everything. So, you know, being on the different ones and then just kind of going where your strengths are and what's working. If you see that one channel is getting a lot more activity, obviously spending more time cultivating and growing that.
And when it comes to that also, if you're a single singer-songwriter, you're a band, usually a band member, one of the band members will have that role, will have that social networking role, usually one that's just much better, like there's...
Someone told the secrets.
But usually somebody should take on that role. So if you guys are sound checking and doing all that stuff, but then you don't necessarily need this guy anymore, he's already sound check. Have him go off and start doing your, we're about to get on or whatever, do your social networking from there. Because usually there's one guy that will overlook all of that, where somebody else, where the other band members have a different role. There's usually someone that's really good at that, so you don't have to take on that stress all by yourself.
The other gentleman in the back.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. How are you guys doing with false positives? You know, for example, you know, as you're, let's say, aggregating Facebook or Twitter, you know, if someone talks about the police, do they need a band or do they need the actual law enforcement?
That's called.
How are you dealing with that?
That's called polysemy, and it's the like bane of a lot of people's existence, because there's a band, Girls, and their album's called Album. And there's a band Hockey, and
Oh, I love them.
and there's a band Red, and all the, we collect a list of all of these ones, and it's like, hey, there's a band called Town, add that to the list. You know?
Well, that's actually what we've been doing statistics on when we were talking about for dot music. We're like, okay, you made up a great point, like the police. Police don't even own police.com. You know, if you go to the police.com, it's not the police.com, you know. But it was a great point. Like there's 16 bands named Rain, and like 20 bands named Boys and Girls, or something crazy like that. How do we know? Like we know we already have to work with. We're already working with the major labels, and we'll have to give all the bands their dot music, you know, because we've already been told, well, that no one else can own Lady Gaga dot music, right? Lady Gaga's people, they can't. No one else can own Lady Gaga dot music. Like, okay, well, how many other Lady Gagas are there out there? But you know, you never know. I mean, that's a great thing. There's just no way to know, you know.
Here's how we deal with it. So we collect, we have the 15 different profiles where the band is. So we look through an article and we parse it. And if they link to any of the article, you know, if they link to the band's MySpace page, then we know that that's a official one. We also we have an activity and event stream in the Premiere product that pulls in blog mentions and news mentions. And the sources of that, we don't just do a random comb of everything. We focus on music-specific blogs, and that is a much higher quality filter than even like the Google Alerts can't even parse out these United States, the band, versus
These United States.
So that's
Yeah.
my friend. But yeah, yes. But even like what he said, I mean, even though linking back to their MySpaces, I mean, that's the band that has it. We were just talking about today how the band Bush couldn't go play in Canada because there was another band in Canada with the trademark name Bush. So for years, Bush was not allowed to play in Canada until their legal team finally went, I guess, and got them their trademark. But, you know, like Girls, he talked about Girls. Do you know any bands that are named Girls? Girls doesn't even have their own MySpace.